This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof. Wolff question from our Patreon community. This one comes from Richard Geddes, and it asks about inflation, a topic very much in the news, and as usual, being used in very contradictory ways by the various social forces fighting for dominance in an American capitalism that is encountering ever deeper problems and suffering through a long-term decline, which is still being denied. And when you have that kind of situation and all the chaos, tension, fear, and anxiety that goes with it, any basic idea like inflation is going to be thrown into the disputes in all manner of ways, ending up typically with lots of confusion. So let me try to clarify as best I can. First of all, let's be crystal clear what an inflation means. It's very simple. It means a general rise in prices. Not that every price goes up, but that in general, on the average, in the most cases, prices go up. There can be an inflation in the entire economy, then we're talking about everything that happens there. Or it could be an inflation in a region, or in an industry, or in parts of the economy divided up any which way. So that's what it is. And why is it a problem? Because it tends to cause all kinds of social difficulties. For example, if you live on a fixed income, your employer can sign a contract with you and you don't get a raise for X years, or you get very small raises. If prices start going up and you can't match them with an increase in your income, you're going to be hurt. If you're a pensioner living on a pension set up years ago that doesn't go up in any regular way, you will be hurt. Even if your income goes up the way, for example, Social Security does, it typically doesn't go up anywhere near as fast as the prices do, so you start to fall behind. Companies have a hard time deciding what to do because in addition to all the usual problems about carrying out production, they have to make guesses about how far and how fast prices are going to go up, and that also complicates and confuses issues there. So in general, societies do not like inflation because they cause trouble, tension, difficulties, and conflict. What causes inflations to happen? There's basically two ways that they happen. One is called demand pull. That's when there is an awful lot of people who have money to spend, but not enough goods for them to find to spend on. It's like too many people wanting the 6 ice cream cones that the ice cream vendor has to sell. If there's 6 people who want it, and 6 cones available, that's a pretty easy problem to solve. You do it. But suppose there are 20 people who want those 6 cones. Very quickly, those 20 people, eager to get the cone, are going to have to eliminate 14 out of those 20 people. And the way in a market system this is done is not to ask who deserves the cone, who hasn't had one for a while, who's a child for whom it means more. None of those questions count. It's a simple calculation. Those with money bid up the price of the scarce ice cream cone. And therefore, more and more people can't afford an ice cream cone that costs $30, but rich people can. So all you're doing with the inflation is having prices go up as a rationing mechanism. It's a way to determine who gets whatever is scarce. And it's, of course, the rich who get it and everybody else who's frozen out. So inflations can happen if there's more money looking for goods than there are goods available. In a time like now and in recent years, when governments like the United States have been pumping vast amounts of new money into the economy, it's perfectly reasonable to wonder whether that money is going to end up bidding up the prices in exactly the way of my ice cream example. It doesn't have to happen, but it could. There's a second way inflations can happen that have nothing to do with demand or money. They have to do with what's called cost push inflation. That's when some part of the economy decides to raise prices, and everybody else who buys from this part of the economy, having to pay higher prices, turns around and likes to try at least to raise its prices to offset the extra cost of the one who started it. Perfect example in recent decades, oil, petroleum. If the price of oil goes up, all of the many industries that use oil or derivatives from oil like fertilizer and plastic and all the rest of it, they will start raising prices too. And that's another way an inflation can occur. So now to Richard Geddes' question in a nutshell. When the government of the United States prints money the way it has, trying desperately to deal with an economy in greater difficulty than it's been in a century, it is pumping up the money supply, and that could lead to an inflation. But it doesn't necessarily have to if the people who get the money in their hands don't use it to run after goods and services. And what might lead them to behave that way? Well, if the United States is busy around the world, which it is, then a good bit of that money can flow elsewhere in the world. It may cause an inflation over there, but not here, because it's not running after goods and services here. Here's another way this can happen. If you pump money into the economy, it may not be profitable for anyone to produce more goods and services. And if people know that, they don't try to buy anymore. Maybe if we have a lot of unemployment, they can't buy anymore. So it doesn't end up with more money looking after goods, because the extra money that the people at the top get, they're the ones who get that money the government pumps in, is offset by the reduced spending of all the unemployed that we've had, for example, over the last year. Then the money may only go into one area. For example, in the last 10 years, the addition of money has gone overwhelmingly into the stock market. And guess what? There's an inflation, because the money looking to buy stocks was much bigger than the available stocks bidding up the price. And who's sitting there applauding? Well, the rich, because the top 10% of the richest Americans own 85% of the shares in the stock market. So they're sitting gleeful as the value of their shares goes up, since all that money produced an inflation just in the stock market where it's good for them, and not in the general level of prices where it might have bitten them in the rear end. So these are the ways that inflation may happen. And of course, everything I've described can and will change. There's indeed evidence right now of rising prices, because the stock market is so high that money is more and more scared to go in there and is beginning to look elsewhere to make money by bidding up the price of real estate, which will make housing and home owning and renting more expensive, and buying up land and things like that. And that may get us closer to the more traditional inflation. This is Richard Wolff, thanking our Patreon community once again, and signing off for Democracy at Work.